Good afternoon, everybody. So I wanted to thank CyberScoop for the chance to be invited and talk. I think if you want to frame the discussions for today, we really need to think about whether doing the same thing over and over and over again is going to get us any different results, right? There's been enormous amounts of money put into cybersecurity over the past several years. There's been enormous focus in the technology, yet I think anybody who's looking at the trend lines, looking at the types of threats we're seeing and how the threats are evolving would say it's going in the wrong direction. So what do we have to do to change that trend line? I'm becoming increasingly convinced that it's not a technological problem, that the human factors are really the key to getting ahead of the cyber threats. And so what do I mean by human factors? Do I mean that we need to do phishing education? You know, you can point to the stats that say 92% of phishing or of exploitation today happens because of phish, right? Somebody clicked a link. So if we just make the users that much smarter so they won't click that link, we won't have exploitation. It's a piece, right? It's part of a large defense in depth. We ought to have smart users. They ought to understand the implications of clicking a link from something they don't know, of running an executable they didn't understand. But in reality, I think if you're running an important IT system and you can't withstand a user doing a click, you haven't done your homework from the beginning. Why do I say that? Because everybody at some point is going to click something they shouldn't. I'm pretty attentive, and I also know that, you know, given the public persona, what I've got on social media, if you wanted to craft something to get me to click a link, you probably could, right? So that means I have to make sure that the environment I'm on is going to withstand me clicking a link that came to me through the internet. We need to do that for all our users. So if it's not training on phishing, how do I say human factors are the key to cybersecurity? Because I think cybersecurity starts at the top. It starts with the leadership ethos. It starts with the investment that boards and overseers and others put into cybersecurity. It all comes down to starting from the beginning and saying, I'm going to have strong cybersecurity. When you look at the environment we have today, where are we struggling, right? I'm in government, I know we're struggling. There are pockets of excellence, and there are places that my head hurts, right? Because of the state of the cybersecurity, infrastructure, maintenance, and focus. If you look out at industry, you get people in the same verticals where one company's excellent and another company is on the front page for a massive breach that should never have happened. The common factor of all the good and secure companies is that they have taken the time to invest. They invest in the technology. They invest in the people. They put the appropriate resources. All companies don't need the same level of defense. All government agencies, even all systems inside government agencies don't need the same level of defense. But what they have done is they've evaluated the risk and they've appropriately designed the infrastructure, gotten the expertise, the help, at times it'll be the help, and they've gotten the capabilities to defend themselves. As you try to figure out how you need to be defended, you can look at an industry like the financial sector. They are constantly under attack. They are constantly seeing people trying to exploit them and take the assets they have. Why? Because that's where the money is, right? For the most part, the banks are doing an outstanding job. Again, why? They've looked at their threat environment. They've matched resources to it. Their leadership, from the CEOs to the board to their investors, have looked at it and said, we're under threat. We need to invest properly in the cybersecurity to protect our assets. At times when you look at the government agencies, I don't know that we've had that same attention to what are we trying to protect and where are we trying to defend. NSA is part of the Department of Defense. In the department, there's a phrase that rolls off the lips. Everybody talks about the man, train, and equip mission of the services. I would ask you, is it time we evolve to man, train, equip, and defend? We've got to do something that starts to flip the switch, to think about the human factor, the leadership, the culture, the ethos that says, I'm going to invest in the systems to make sure that in the time of crisis, in the time I need to count on them, or even in the peacetime when I can't afford the exploitation, that they are going to serve me in cyber extremis, right? They're going to withstand the adversary's attempt to come at us. And so getting that mindset of man, train, equip, and defend would probably put us a little more down the road of looking at where we're putting our investments, how we talk about the resources we're going to put into defense, and even how the leadership is talking to their employees, their troops, their partners about their expectations for making cybersecurity. You only have to look at technology to understand we are in the middle of exponential growth of the things we trust and connect into the cyber era. I look at what's around me, whether it's the iPhone I carry, whether it's the online services I use, whether it's the companies I entrust with my data, or the companies that give me services or manage my finances. I am increasingly surrounded by things that touch the internet. I also bring them into my home. I think I've told several folks in DC that I am, to my wife's chagrin, what's known as an early adopter, right? That means I'm going out and buying the latest gadget, toy, and other things, bringing it home, and inevitably those early cool things, they're more and more often internet connected. So that's a risk surface I have. I consider that. I look at those things and I take care to decide what I'm going to give it access to, where I'm going to connect it to, what I'm going to trust with it. But it is a risk surface in my life. I look at the people we're bringing into government, whether it's into the intelligence community where I serve, or our military, or any other branch or department. And what we have are generations of young people joining government service who have never known a time now without this in their pocket and their hand. And that's a problem for the intel community where we say, all right, welcome to work. Here's the box you put your phone in before you even enter the door, right? They can't work, think, and live in the same way that they've grown up and even gone through school, collaborating, looking up information, and connecting to the rest of society. We literally have put one hand behind their back and taken away the tool that they have expected to use. So as we watch technology invade all parts of our lives, even more than the cell phone systems we're expecting, but we move on to Internet of Things and other technologies, we've got to consider how we're going to protect those. And I would assert that you don't do that without the human factors setting the stage to go into those devices and make them secure. There are things like the Internet of Things, or technologies like the Internet of Things, that are increasingly woven into the fabric of the environment. Small sensors, devices that phone home, things that are smart on the edge of the network that talk to big data aggregators that can then be smarter and allow you remote access. I'm thinking about the ability to lock and unlock your house, the ability to go and check your thermometer, but the thermometer also knowing and being aware of the weather outside and being able to compensate and make smarter decisions about how it heats your home. All of those things project risk surfaces onto you. And if we don't have the companies protecting us from the beginning, thinking about secure by design principles, having the regulations that say, hey, I want unique passwords for each thing, not a default. I want it to be able to update when there's patches. I want that update to be encrypted and signed so I can trust the software that's being downloaded is not rogue. All of those things are nice to have today, is not mandatory. I think when we get to the human factors where we're demanding those things, where we won't buy them or the law won't allow them to be sold, I think at that point we'll start to change the curve of this trend line that's been going the wrong way for several years. This human factor also applies to the nation state problems we're having. Right? The folks that are coming at us, whether they're coming at our elections, whether they're coming at our critical infrastructure, coming at our finances, they're simply making a human decision. Is the benefit to me going to outweigh the cost of taking this risk of trying this action? And today, that cost-benefit question is really easy to answer, right? There's very little consequence to going out and trying something, right? If you live in the US and you're trying to go after a cyber target, there's a consideration there, the ability of FBI and other law enforcement to reach out, touch you, indict you, and put you in jail. If you're in an Eastern Bloc country and you're able to anonymize yourself to some extent, but reach out and steal money in the US, now you've got more layers in between your action and the possible consequences, to include your nation state protecting you. The extradition and the agreements on cybercrime make it harder to actually put hands on. So the risk versus gain determination is skewed. The same thing at the big nation state level, right? Today, it seems that there are nations who believe that it is in their advantage, and there are few detriments to going after things we hold dear, like elections. So how do we change the international dynamics where they are afraid of the costs? And I think we're starting to push on some of those levers to change the cost-value equation on that when we use all elements of our national power, to include diplomatic, judicial, and indictments. We use the capabilities to impose financial penalties through sanctions. And we go all the way to, at times, using our cyber capabilities to contest their ability to go after us on a continual basis. We've got to address the issues that are at a threshold short of war and change the cost-benefit equation. So again, I would assert that it's human factors at the bottom of almost all of our cyber problems. We've had the luxury at the big national level to be very safe and secure in our homeland. We've got natural oceans, we've got nice neighbors. We have not for generations seen attacks on our homeland soil. That has changed in the internet age, right? The threat has come to us. So I would assert, in closing, that we need to change the human factors that make it a reasonable cost-benefit decision to come at us in our personal lives, in our businesses, and in our national security. Thank you for your time and attention.